Hello everybody and welcome back to another Oscar prediction video where today I will be taking a look at the category of Best Director. Now, this year has been a little bit different from some previous Oscar years. You'll notice I'm more than halfway through at this point, and I've only done one of the acting categories, and I haven't done either of the screenplay categories. And that's because this year, a lot of those awards are trickier to predict. The above the line categories are trickier to predict. And I think we've seen now that SAG has happened, it's really, really hard to figure out who's going to come up on top in a lot of these categories. But Best Director, I think at this point you can say that Best Director feels pretty locked. And I almost wish I could do Best Picture early, because that category feels like it's pretty locked too. But at this Best Picture has to be at the end, and so, you know what? I feel pretty confident about this. So let's dive into Best Director. Fifth most likely to win is Ruben Östlund for Triangle of Sadness. Now, this is an interesting nomination. It's a nomination that came out of nowhere for a lot of people. Ruben Östlund has been making a name for himself with films like Force Majeure and The Square. This is his first English language film, but despite the fact that it's an English language film, he seems to be taking the foreign director slot that you would assume would go to Edward Berger for All Quiet on the Western Front. It's really shocking that he was not nominated when Ruben Östlund was, and it seems to be that Ruben Östlund is a more established name. And if you look at his three films, I think he's done other stuff prior to this, but these are the three movies that he's known for. I think you do get a sense that he has a very specific, dark sense of humor, and he really likes just like commenting on social satire. He definitely is a director with a lot to say, and I think he says a lot very well in this movie. However, I can't imagine that he actually wins. Looking at the stats, the only thing that he has is like a directing prize at like EFA. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it just doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would win. It is a Best Picture nominee, but it's in the lower echelon of Best Picture nominees, and I just don't think there's going to be enough support for him over the fellow nominees. It's definitely good work, but I don't think it's going to win. Fourth most likely to win is Martin McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin. So this is one of the most liked films of the year. However, McDonagh has always been kind of right on the edge of the Best Director conversation. For a long time, I didn't think he was a lock for the nomination, but he got it. The direction in the film is good, and there's definitely some like good cinematography in it and good visual style. And of course, a big part of directing is directing great performances out of the actors, and that's certainly something that McDonagh does here. However, I don't know. I guess it just has less of a visual style as the top three films in this category, and there's less of a like cool scope narrative, I guess. I'm just throwing words together at this point. I'm kind of tired as I'm recording this. And even though the movie is well liked, I just don't see this going all the way, because it's just not the kind of directing that wins. It's been a long time since they gave Best Director to a film that was just great performances and great writing. They usually want to give it to something that has more of a distinct visual style or bigger spectacle, and neither of those really apply to Banshees of Inisherin. So it's good work, and the nomination really speaks to strength of the film overall, but I really don't think this has any realistic shot at winning. All that he has are 2 Critics Awards for New York Film Critics Online and GWNYFCA, whatever that is. So he's not winning. Third most likely to win is Todd Field for Tar. Now, Todd Field, amazingly, this is only his third film. Todd Field has also directed In the Bedroom and Little Children, and then he took a really, really long break. I'm not sure why, but he came back with Tar, which is very well received, and the film does have some very distinctive visuals in it. I think the way that Todd Field tells the story is very distinctive, and the nomination does make a lot of sense. And I can even see some people really, really wanting to go for it, given like the visual language of the film and the overall what the film is trying to say, because Todd Field also wrote the screenplay. Funnily enough, all five of the nominated directors also wrote the screenplay and are nominated in original screenplay. It's weird that there's 5 for 5 overlap there. But Todd Field, he does have a handful of critics wins, I think 5 critics wins, including LAFCA, but I so technically speaking, he is number 2 in terms of critics wins. But again, I don't know how well the film is received overall. And Todd Field, I think he's more of a niche director. I think that this is one for the art crowd. He's gonna get votes, but I think if you look at the competition, he doesn't have the narrative or just the broad swell of support that he would need in order to win the Oscar. Second most likely to win is Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans. Okay, so there's been much talk about this. Steven Spielberg does have a significant win, which is the Golden Globe. Obviously, a very, very beloved director who's been in the field a long, long time, but this particular film has a very distinctive narrative behind it, which is he's making a movie about his life. And because men will literally make a movie about their childhood instead of going to therapy. With all seriousness, though, the film is very well directed, and Spielberg did pay a lot of attention to detail and like making sure that every little thing was accurate to the way it happened. So there is a narrative there, and in his Golden Globe speech, he did talk about this extensively. However, the film as a whole really does kind of feel like it's losing momentum. It really does feel like the Oscar bait movie that seemed like such a frontrunner early on in the season, but sort of fell apart because people were more passionate about other movies. And while I think Spielberg is obviously very well respected, he has 2 Oscars already. And yes, the narrative is there for him to win a third, but just looking on what's happened with critics' wins, I just don't see it happening. I don't see them going for him. I just It didn't win DGA. This is the sort of thing that you would expect to win DGA if it was going to win the Oscar. With that said, the directors who are going to win the Oscar, number 1 most likely to win, are Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So first of all, if you look at critics' wins, not only do they have the DGA and Critics' Choice Award, but they have 40 wins. 40 wins. That's a lot of wins. And I think there is so much respect for what they were able to pull off here. So these are 2 directors that had been working in music videos for a long time, and then they do Swiss Army Man in 2016, which is weird, but also very well respected and does earn them a lot of like first-time director awards. And then I think Daniel Scheinert on his own makes The Death of Dick Long, which is not very well received. And then they reunite once more for this movie, and it's such a big juggernaut. And it's so loved. And the thing about this movie is, even though it's 2 directors, it still feels like such a singular vision. Like, nobody else on planet Earth could have made this movie. It's so specific. And there's really nothing else like this unless you count Swiss Army Man, and it's clear to me that whatever the Daniels do next, they have such a distinctive visual style that's maybe right up there with like Wes Anderson or Tim Burton. Like, you're gonna know a Daniels movie when you see it. And other directors are gonna try to do the Daniels style, and it's not gonna be as good because no one can do this very specific thing. Even when the film is showing these really surreal imagery, this really bizarre or even kind of stupid imagery, they still manage to get emotional pathos out of it. And it's something that shouldn't work, and yet it does. And I think these directors have just been so well liked on the trail, and the movie, of course, is doing so well. Even if this doesn't win Best Picture, I think it's still very, very likely to win Best Director. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. A shame they couldn't win the BAFTA. If Edward Berger were in this category, I would consider him a very likely spoiler, but he's not, and so I do think that this is a pretty easy win for Daniels. So, thank you very much for watching, and be sure to tune in next time where I will be taking a look at the category of Best Costume Design. See you then.